the guy in the awesome shirt, our friend Razlan. Razlan runs events at SCMP. We had him last year at our Chiang Mai event, and it was spectacular. This guy has a lot of knowledge and a great love for the media industry. This year has been an incredibly hard one for Razlan, trying to figure out what to do with all of the physical events that the SCMP has put together, converting all of them into virtual events and finding ways to make them, profitable. And I think this is a great lesson for all of us as we think about where the future is. I think all of us need to know how to do virtual events. I know we've been learning, our way around this stuff. Ruslan joins us here today to give us ideas on how he's been doing it.
Right. All right. Hi, everyone. The name is Razlan, as Alan Richard has said. Thank you for having me at Beta. And greetings from Hong Kong, the land of dim sum and very expensive housing. Also the land of mass protest, umbrella revolution, and also the national security law. So a lot of things has happened in the past couple of months in Hong Kong. And this is a very important and difficult time for Hong Kong as a city. So it's very interesting to see how an event business like ours in SCMP, in the South China Morning Post, has been thriving in the past couple of months. But a little bit of background about myself. My name is Razlan. I'm a Malaysian. I'm not a Hong Konger. I moved to Hong Kong about 12 years ago. I joined SCMP about 13 years ago. I'm not an events guy. I grew to be an events guy, and I was asked to lead the SCMP events business in September last year. And if you actually follow the developments of Hong Kong, September was also the month that the protest has started in Hong Kong. There is a lot of mass protests and disturbance and so-called riots on the street. And then COVID-19 hit Hong Kong sometime in December and January. So I literally took on the events business, well, probably one of the most hard impacted industry because of COVID-19 and the protests at the time when all these things are happening. So lucky for me to be taking over that. So it has been a very interesting and admittedly very difficult time, a learning experience for me as well as a media person for the past 1 year or so. But without further ado, let me dive into the presentation for today. Let me just click on this. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. So today I'll be looking at how online events are the new normal for media and what we have learned in SCMP trying to add virtual events to our work in SCMP. So I love this photograph. This photo is of my team. You see me right in the middle with a big tummy. Working from home really is not friendly to me at my waistline. So this is my team, and this picture actually encapsulates very perfectly how the reality of our events business in Hong Kong has been like. We have to wear masks all the time in the office when we're running events, but we also have been going. Almost all our events has moved to virtual. What you see here is a temporary green room that we used for one of our virtual events back in May. So I actually really love this photograph because it actually represents the reality that I face on a day-to-day basis. So I want to move on to talk a little bit about the type of events that SCMP run. We have 3 types of events, broadly speaking. The first type is what we call impact events. These are flagship events, brand name events that bring SCMP journalism to life. And the most well-known brand under this impact series will be the China's Conference series. So China Conference, as you know, SCMP has a mission to lead the global conversation on China. And China, because of everything that has happened in the past couple of months, has become the center of media attention around the world. So for us, the China Conference series is actually a very important extension of the journalism that's been done in SCMP. And we have been running China conference for a couple of years now. But since last year, we started to do this event in 3 different locations. In our home city in Hong Kong, but also in Southeast Asia. We run this once in Kuala Lumpur. We also plan to run it in Manila, but that didn't happen because of COVID-19. We also run it once in the United States, sometime end of last year in New York City. So this event, this is one of our most flagship event under the Impact Event Series. Because of COVID-19, we have to pivot everything to virtual. So for the first time, China Conference in Hong Kong was actually run as a virtual event back in May. So what you see here is actually, I mean, you can't see their faces because of the mask, but this is what we do. Even if you are streaming from a studio, you have to be wearing masks. So, so this panel here is actually a public health expert panel. The background looks a bit odd because it's a virtual background. It's actually a green room. We actually stream it live to a very global audience. A typical in-person physical China Conference Hong Kong event is about 200 to 300 people usually. That is a big in Hong Kong scale because hotel ballrooms in Hong Kong are very small. So we can only fit about 200 to 300 people at any one point of time. But in the virtual event, there, of course, the geographical barrier is gone. The physical barrier is gone. We actually reach out to about 2,000 plus conference attendees from around the world. And that has been by far our largest China conference to date. The second type of events that we do is marketplace events, where we connect buyers and sellers in different industry. I personally brand this as the festival series. And the festival events are one of the most well-known in Hong Kong, but run by the South China Morning Post, is the International Schools Festival. It's a flagship education event connecting the many international schools in Hong Kong with prospective parents who want to bring the kids into international schools. We also run some property events, and just back in August, we run a virtual festival on Singapore property, where we bring Singapore developers dialing in from Singapore to meet with a regional buyer, prospective property buyer and investors from around the region, but predominantly coming from Hong Kong. So this is the kind of marketplace events that we run. We also have what we call the third type of category. The third type of events that we run is special project events, which are experimental in topics, format, and audience. But truth to be told, it's actually just a category for me to fit any other events that does not fit in under impact events or marketplace. So all those events that does not fit anywhere else fall under special project. And one of the most dominant special project event that we have been running is the SCMP Conversation Series. So if you're on SCMP events mailing list, you'll be receiving almost on a weekly basis the different kind of webinars that have been running from under the SCMP Conversation brand. It can range from healthcare to education to property to Greater China to politics, all sorts of stuff. So what you see here is a panel sponsored by Credit Suisse talking about COVID-19 and the economy. And this panel is actually being streamed live from SCMP studio in Times Square, Hong Kong, first from our office. But obviously, over the past couple of months, there are times whereby the whole Hong Kong office of SCMP has been shut down. So we're unable to use the studio. So we have to use what we call a distributed speaker format, whereby everyone from the host, from organizer to speakers to attendees all dial in to a virtual event format, very similar to what you guys are doing right now on Google Hangout. We also have been running some experiment in terms of readers revenue. So instead of sponsorship, we actually run events that actually sell ticketed item for people to pay for access. So we have these are predominantly we do it for important webinars that we think that readers will pay for. But I think more importantly also is that it's very difficult to find sponsors for. There's a typical very politically themed webinars. So what you see on the screen right now is something that we have already done called the National Security Law Webinar Series. In the coming, by end of October, SCMP will be running a US election 2020 SCMP Conversation Series, whereby we highlight the topic of China and the importance of China in the US election and its impact on how it framed the conversation of US election between President Trump and candidate Biden, and how that will impact the election outcome in November. So there's something that we will be running by end of October. So those are the three types of events that SCMP run: the impact events, marketplace, and special project. And how did we get here? How did SCMP events actually get to where we are today? Okay, so first of all, this is a very important part. I think everybody will be this come as a no-brainer, is that we need to experiment with event tech stack. What we meant by event tech stack is that we need to look at the different solutions out there that actually can help us to do virtual events. The first thing that we did when we pivoted from physical to virtual event is to do demo of the different solutions in the market. So it's like demo after demo after demo after demo. So so far we have probably demoed about 30 plus solutions on events for virtual events. I heard that in the market there are over 200 of them. The market is very fragmented. Every single solution has a different USP, they serve a different purpose. So you need to figure out the different combinations of events, the different combination of tech that can power your virtual events. And to do that, you need to understand the process of running a virtual event. So for us in SCMP events, we look at event website, CMS on the fly, because you build event websites so fast that you need to do it on the fly. So your CMS must be powerful enough to be able to do that. And for that regard, we use predominantly service called Webflow. For event registration and ticketing, so these are for people to register, they give you the details, sometimes they pay for tickets. And we for that we use services like Eventbrite or Event Extra. Event Extra is a company based in Hong Kong. We also have on-site check-ins, the process for people to come to a physical event, they need to check in the attendance and get the lanyard. So we have that as well. We also have event content delivery, and how this is especially for virtual events, how we stream the event virtually to the live audience, how we're going to do that, and how we're going to stream the event after the event itself as a post-event on-demand playback or video. We also have other event deliverables, and this is mainly for sponsors in terms of the data analytics that we can have and the leads that we can generate from our events, customer leads for our sponsors. But and also we also look at customer relationship management system to manage the attendees, the speakers, and sponsors. So this process did not exist really in the past in SCMP because we only run a couple of physical events in a year. But with virtual events, we realized that there is a need for us to understand the process very clearly, how we run a virtual event from conceptualization to post-event delivery. So that event stack is very important to us. Also, we also understand client criteria predominantly on two issues. One is privacy policy, like really how much of the data can be shared or cannot be shared with our client. Also, there are security requirements. For example, some banks would not consider certain platforms for their virtual events because the platform has run into security issues in the past. So this kind of thing play a part in designing, experimenting with your event tech stack. The second part is about educating your clients and team members. So we spend a lot of time communicating the values of virtual events with clients, and it has been incredibly difficult in the beginning because no one believes in virtual events. They think that virtual events is much less valuable compared to physical events. So there's a lot of education that needs to be done. But over the past couple of months, more and more clients open up to virtual events, simply because there isn't any other choice for physical events. So they need to consider virtual events as part of their marketing mix. And some of the most important values for virtual events include bigger reach, richer matrix, that we actually get a lot more data compared to physical events, of course, lead generation, but also better speaker selection. We find as event organizers that we are able to secure higher level, more speakers that usually are more difficult to invite to events when it's a virtual event format. We guess it's because we can offer flexibility on how they can participate. For example, we can do a recorded session instead of asking the person to commit on the event date. We can record a session and stream it on the event date itself. So the recording session can happen anytime before the event. Also, if the person is dialing in, the commitment to travel to the event venue, like flying to the country and going to the destination, is much lesser. So literally, like for this event, I just need to dial in like half an hour beforehand. And once this is done and it's done, I can go back to my life, go back to my work in the office. So because of that, it's easier to get high caliber speaker through virtual events. I think COVID-19 also play a part. Nobody can travel, so everybody stay where they are, so they have more time to actually participate in virtual events. And also in terms of educating our team members, we provide a lot of space, a lot of buffer learning and experiment. There's no such thing as stupid question. There's no such thing as silly questions. Everything we acknowledge and accommodate mistakes. We learn from it and we move on from that. So that space to be able to experiment is very important to SCMP. All right, there's some issues here. Okay, right. So we also increase the productivity of the entire team. We increase the number of events that we run, and the additional number of events we run are mainly virtual. We increase our efficiency within the team with repeatable process in producing an event, especially for virtual events. We also introduce a suite of project management tools. And we also and the tools that we use include things like Google Suite, which SCMP use company-wide, Slack for real-time communication. Rike is a project management tool that SCMP events team specifically has been using, has been very effective in streamlining communications and updating project status on the fly. And soon we'll be using Salesforce as our main CRM tool within SCMP events. We also increase cross-departmental collaboration in terms of sales, in terms of design resource, in terms of promotion and partnership. So we work even more tightly with other departments with the SCMP to deliver our events. Right. I think this part is going to be the most important part to me. It's the most important part in building a team culture that enable us to reach where we are today. We never say die. If we hit a roadblock, we just say, okay, how can we work around it? If we encounter a client who pull out because they cannot no longer participate in a physical event, what are we going to do about it? How can we plug the revenue gap? So there's always a never say die attitude, and that is being communicated from top to bottom, back to the top. That's to say, why I say bottom to top, because sometimes I myself as a boss of SCMP events, sometimes even I lapse. Sometimes I feel discouraged and demotivated. My team then pick up the slack. They will in turn encourage me not to lose hope, not to give up. And for that, I've been very thankful to my team. And if my team is in the presentation, thank you for that. You guys are awesome, right? And we also always learn, always learning. This is a very important part of the team culture. And I have been very ultra transparent with the entire team. And how we do that? Actually, we do have a weekly email that outlines our learnings, our priorities for the week, our progress, and things to celebrate. In a weekly email that is called This Week's in Event. So I spend like a couple of hours every single week to craft an email to send to the team on every Monday before we start our day. I also shared with the entire team our P&L statements, very transparent, whether we're making money or losing money on each of the events, but also as a business in total, so that they know how far more we need to go before we hit our targets. We also have a lot of shared event materials and status through project management tool like Rike, and also shared folders like Google Drive. So this was the result of this transformation. The number of events that we run from a year-on-year basis has increased from 12 plus in the last fiscal year to more than 45 in this fiscal year. So it is almost a fourfold increase in number of events. The revenue that we are projecting to get from this fiscal year is double compared to last year. The cost has decreased by approximately 15% compared to last year, and because of that, our profitability has projected to increase by multifold. For obvious reason, I can't share the exact numbers, but I just want to give you a flavor on how the numbers are looking at. In terms of the team members, they remain the same. The number of team members remain the same. The function remains the same, but we increase digital skill set and, of course, increase productivity as well. So a look at the past, present, and future of events. I think before COVID-19, like I mentioned, we run events in 3 different physical locations, 12 plus live events. During COVID-19, we are increased our number of events to 45 plus, mainly run from Hong Kong. And there's a rapid pivot from live to virtual events across all categories of events that we run. But after COVID-19, we don't know when that is, but we hope it's coming soon. We feel that live events, physical events will be a premium offering. We will not run as many physical events as before because we want to make it as a premium product for our sponsors and attendees. Virtual events become a regular staple, things that we run consistently on a week-to-week basis. And hybrid event, whereby we combine the best of physical event with a virtual feature, will offer maximum reach, impact, and results for our speakers, for our sponsors, and for our attendees. And that will be the next set of digital skill set, that not only digital skill set, for digital and live event in terms of hybrid offerings that I think SCMP events will need to learn and internalize and really scale in the near future. And on that note, I will pause my presentation. So you can find me on Twitter as Razlan Manjaji, and this is my email address. And at this point, I will be happy to take any questions that you guys might have. Thank you.
Razlan, that's amazing.
So cool, no?
So cool. This was not what I was expecting to see you, pivot and it's like a fourfold increase in events.
I know, and I was telling Alan just now how surprised I was to see that your costs came down, obviously, but only 15%. But then he was like, "But look, there's like 4 times the events."
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean, this is obviously very meta because here we are on an online event discussing an online events business. But
right.
I found that last slide, I mean, it was pretty spectacular. Congratulations, by the way, on the good news. You really turned the business around.
Thank you. Yeah, I think to understand that, I think running the scale, to produce a virtual event versus a physical event, the effort is less, definitely, because in a physical event, you won't run a 1 hour physical event. You'll run an 8 hours physical event, half a day or 1 day. But for a virtual event, It can be a single hour panel discussion, and that's it. Because of that, the scalability is just like went up even with the same amount of resources. So, but that need to come with a discipline and also repeatable process and the right tools to help the team to produce that. But the cost of these tools are cheaper, much cheaper compared to, let's say, renting a ballroom, renting getting physical people to go to the place, like travel expenses and all that. That's why, as a whole, we find that the cost of running 12 physical events in a year is actually more expensive than running 45, maybe predominantly virtual events in a single year. And that math was not apparent to us in the beginning, because at the beginning we just say that let's try pivot and try our best to change and see what happens. But when I run the numbers, I was like, oh, it's actually make a lot of sense. That's why across the events industry, we feel that virtual events is not something that's going to go away. It's going to be there because it's make a lot of economical sense. But at the same time, physical events is it's going to be such a premium offering that people would pay a lot of money to be part of. So it should be a very exclusive offering for our sponsors and speakers.
Yeah, I was just hearing you say that, virtual events are less work than physical events. And I'm looking at Shirley's face and wondering, she's sitting here, she's produced beta in 2019. She now produced beta online 2020. And she's also produced it like 3 times running.
Yeah.
Because we were meant to do it live in Chiang Mai in February, live in Chiang Mai in September, and then we pivoted to online in September. So we'll probably, at some point, I want to see Shirley run her own session because she's a pro. Alan, you were gonna.
No, I was just gonna to throw this over to Corinne, who's got a whole bunch of questions and very good framing questions as well.
Corinne. Go for it, Corinne.
Yeah, jump in.
Okay. Oh, thanks, guys. Razlan, I've dropped you an email, so because I've got to write this piece. So this is such a great, it's perfect timing. So I'll pick up those separately. But what I'm quite interested in is someone in your role has to get their head around really specific topics that you don't bring the expertise to. So there's high school education on the one hand, and then there's real estate, and it's got to tick a lot of boxes for the kinds of people who come along. So when you're designing events, which aren't about journalism, where we all kind of know how to do that in sort of who would we ask, when you've got to go right outside your area of expertise, how do you design, how do you work with outsiders to help you design the right event efficiently?
Okay, when we go into new areas whereby new event areas that we are not familiar with, like when we first move into property, I know nuts about property. I don't invest, I don't buy, so I know nuts about it. So one thing is very important. One thing that I find is that we go into new areas out of necessity is survival. We cannot keep harping on the same events area like education for us to survive this COVID-19 period. So we need to go to new areas. So it's out of necessity. But one important resource for SCMP events team is our editorial team. They know their stuff. So when we talk about international properties fair, for example, I will talk to our international properties editors and ask them which country is now like scaling up in terms of getting overseas investment into property buyers are flocking to the country to buy. So they will tell me things like Malaysia is used to be very friendly to immigrants and retirees and investors because of the MM2H program. But they also get places like China is not friendly to buyers at all. So that kind of insights come from editorial team. But they're editorial, they know the industry, the areas very well. But then for the value that my team, being a commercial team, is to understand where the buyers and sellers and the value being connected. And that's how we try to create a monetizable program. Granted, not every single events that we try for the first time will work out. We fail, and not a few times, quite a number of times, but we learn from it. So we then have the courage to say that this is not working. Either we pivot to something else or we drop it entirely. That ability to know that when to pull the plug, and that faith that you have in your knowledge and on your experience and your gut feel to pull the plug is important for us. I think it's not only for events, for any industry right now for COVID-19. Yeah.
I did put some other, thank you so much. I did put some other questions earlier in the chat, and they're sort of things I'm planning to ask a few people for this piece, but I'm very happy, Richard, if you guys want to use them now, that's as part of the conversation, because there aren't a whole lot of questions in the chat. Those can also go to Razlan. I'm really happy with that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Corinne.
Yeah, I don't have to ask them. Someone else could ask them.
No, that's fine.
I'll steal them.
We're a small crowd. We're all up for a good conversation. Razlan, I like what you were saying about knowing when to pull the plug. Almost like there's a MVP for an event. It's a minimum viable product, and then you're going, what's going to make this work? And you've got a few metrics in place, and you want to line them up. And if they don't line up properly, you're going to go, yep, that's not an event. Hey, Chris, would you like to ask your question?
Sure. Thanks so much, Razlan. I'm coming at this from I do corporate comms, so people often come to me and say, would your APAC head like to appear at this event? So I'm trying to answer the question as to why should he or she use his time. So how many people attend the events versus in real life? Because I've always thought one of the big things about these events is it gets people out of the office, they can go meet their old friends, they can have a drink, they can have lunch, they might catch an interesting talk, and then they'll go home. But I guess online you really have to be genuinely interested, right? It's not, there's no sort of extra benefit, it's pure knowledge kind of thing. So
right.
Are you having trouble getting bums on seats? I guess I must.
Okay, I think getting bumps on seat for physical event, for virtual event, not a problem. I think we get the numbers, but obviously our target numbers for physical event is lower than a virtual event. For example, our China conference in New York that we ran December last year, we have 300 seats in the room. Filling that seat is not a problem because our propositions are very different. You rightly pointed out. For a physical event, it's as much as listening to the content of the program, but it's also a moment of serendipity. Like you get to meet other people, like just chat out, hi, I'm from SCMP, who are you, what do you work on, and also networking, and also experience the city that you are in. with a virtual event, drawing back to the example, our China conference US will be happening on December 1st this year. It's a virtual event. Our target is to get 1,500 people attending the event overall. When it comes to virtual events, it is a very utility kind of motivation. For virtual attendees, they will attend to sessions that they really want to hear, and there are very low chances for them to attend the entire program. They will go to a particular session, so very targeted. Like for me, I listen into beta for specific session that I want to. I won't listen to everything. Right? Same for any virtual events that we run. So for virtual events, for us, it's very utility. The networking component for virtual event is still infancy, and it's very difficult maneuver if you are not tech savvy. So it's very difficult to translate online, the networking component. So for us, when we do virtual event, we always look at the utility. What information, what kind of value we can deliver to our attendees. And it's usually information, insight, and listening to someone speak. So that is our main USP. So if an event is originally designed to be a networking feature, for example, roundtable format, keynote breakfast with exclusive breakfast with a keynote speaker. Those are very networking type, and we can't translate that to a virtual event. So we know when you go to a physical event or a virtual event what you're looking for, and you can then evaluate whether the invitation that go to your speakers actually makes sense. If they talk about networking and all that for a virtual event, I doubt that is the right invitation to say yes to.
Yeah, that mirrors my experience with Splice, actually. Just going, you've got to have quality content, I guess, right?
It is.
Interesting people saying interesting things.
Exactly. And the quality content is a given in virtual events. If you don't have quality content, no one will actually turn up. And the speakers that we get, because of the scale of virtual events, we can get a lot more speakers that normally you wouldn't invite, because in a physical event you have limited space, right? But in a virtual event, you can invite a lot more speakers, so a lot of people get a lot more airtime, and you can get a more diverse speakers as well. You know, I know Beta has achieved 55% female speakers. Fantastic. That is actually a good number. For SCMP, we try to get 50-50, or at least 1/3 of the panel is going to be female speakers. But we also look at diversity in terms of race. We don't want to have too many like Asian speakers or Western speakers. We try to get a mix of that as well. We also look at seniority. We don't want to have too senior people. It becomes not as relevant when it comes to middle management people. So this group of people now getting a lot more exposure when it comes to virtual events. So we are able to create a diversity in terms of age, in terms of race, in terms of gender. And that is something that SCMP is very proud on, but it's still a work in progress for us.
Great, thank you.
Spot on. You know what you were saying about intent. You know, we were just discussing this, right? The importance of intent when it comes to digital events is like right up there. If you don't deliver against that intent, it's kind of pointless, right? Because you know, this is not going to be the same as a physical event, and maybe it's time to stop that comparison because it doesn't make sense anymore.
I guess it's intent versus discoverability. You know, you go to a live event somewhere in another city, like Chris is saying, you go to an event and you're there for 3-4 days or whatever, but you also, you know, you're not just there for the actual session. There's a lot of, apart from that intent, there's a lot of discoverability in terms of meetings you can have and old buddies you can, or new friends you make, and all you know, all of that networking. But here online, I think it's pretty much all intent. I know that for us, it's not bums on seats. For us, it's you get a bunch of cool people in the room. If you get the right conversation, I mean, it doesn't matter whether, you know, 60 people like in our earlier, you know, when we started this off, or, you know, like down to 10 or 15 people.
I think another way to look at it is this: if you go to a physical event and the content did not deliver, you can do something else, right? You can go to the booth.
That's right. Exactly. You can go get a beer.
You can go out, right? But in a virtual event, if the content did not deliver, there's nothing else you can do but get back to your life, right? Yep. So that's a very important thing as an event producer you need to take note of, because as a virtual event producer, it's your job to deliver quality content. Because without that, your virtual event does not mean anything to your attendees.
You hear that, Shirley?
I like what Corinne is saying. You know, the thing about whether you know, you're trying to simulate you know, online what we knew from offline events, you know. And you know, us pretentious design folks call it skeuomorphism, right? In the early days, you had a notepad that looked like a notepad with torn sheets, and you had a calendar that was leather bound with stitching. And then people realized that we don't really have to make this look like the real thing. We could just be digital and say, write your text in here. And I think that time has now come, right, for virtual events. We get it. We don't. It doesn't have to look like a booth or a you know, a stage.
Right. I to add on to that point, I think COVID-19, the pandemic, has forced the event industry to transform itself on the kind of transformation that will have taken years to achieve in the matters of months. And because of that, the event industry is no longer the same post COVID-19 compared to before COVID-19. And because of that, I am equally frustrated and thankful at the same time to the pandemic.
Yep.
Because it given a fresh uptake on what the future of the events industry is, right? And people who are able to adapt are the survivors, are the people who can excel in the future. People who did not and still stick to the old ways will lag behind. So it's very similar to how the media industry as a whole was about 10 years ago when the beginning of digital transformation. Yeah.
So true. Hey, Hannah, why don't you jump in with your question now?
Hi, Razlan. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, very curious about all the data gathering, because I know right now that you've got a whole bunch of different like Google Suite, CRM tools, and all that kind of thing. How do you kind of pull the data from all these different parts, as well as with the Q&As that are happening either in chat boxes or talking during in the video call windows? How do you pull all that data together to get valuable insights on focusing your content?
Short answer, we have not. Be careful to use the word experiment with event tech stack. I didn't say develop and launch an event tech stack because SCMP events is not there yet. We are just at our skill development stage, whereby we know that this is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to take. The next step is to build a foundation tag that collects all this data and use this tag to talk to the different systems that you use for registration, for event delivery, for networking, all that kind of thing. Obviously, we cannot use all the data that we collect. So basically, the data that we collect there are two types of it. One is at the point of registration, you get their demographic data, but you also ask for the intent. For example, for education event, we will ask them what kind of curriculum you are interested in. How old is your kid? How is your first kid, your second kid, your third kid? Where do you live? You know, that kind of information are very education based. So we call that declared data. But there are also behavioral data during the event. So at the event, you will know that this particular attendees attended which session, they visited which virtual booth, and that created another set of data, and they formulate a bigger picture on that attendees. So at this point, we have all this data. It's just that when we pull out the data for analysis purpose, for sponsorship purpose, for whatever other purpose, it's manual. We have to pull it out manual using Excel and try to pivot table. Oh my God, I hate pivot table. But pivot table all the way to generate what we need. But we know that the next step is to get everything together. So we are in the process of developing that. I know for a fact that FT is already a bit ahead in this game. They already have a role called a product role that look at event tech stack, that look at connecting the different event tech that FT is using almost similar to how they want to run the newsroom back then, you know, connecting all the different systems together. So SCMP is a bit behind. Obviously, FT is 100 strong events team. Mine is 10 strong. So I do what I can at this point. Yeah.
That's amazing to hear. This is something that's at the back of our minds because, you know, having done this for a whole month now, we see the value in getting that tech stack right, but also to be able to imagine what we can do with that data. So, for example, one thing that we want to have is a list of the most committed, most loyal 500 in the Spice community.
Right.
And we want to see what kind of signals we can take to make that to paint that picture.
Right.
It is definitely where I think the future of events is going. Being able to capture all that data and use it meaningfully for sponsorships and for programming as well. It's like, that is where we need to be a year from now.
Yes, definitely. But for us, at least for my team, when we look at data, we look at from the revenue standpoint, always revenue first, right? So what kind of data and which combination thereof actually allow us to sell more sponsorship, allow us to sell more tickets. That is where we look at the value of data. So it could be like lead generation and reporting for sponsors. It could be looking at ARPU for individual attendees, that kind of thing. So we look at also what subscription is doing, right? Because SCMP just launched subscription, how they're measuring their subscribers' data. We try to translate that into an event attendees kind of matrix, and that's a very interesting experiment for us. It's still a work in progress, so I'm sure 6 months, 12 months from now, we will have new things to share when it comes to event tech stack.
That's amazing. I was also going to paraphrase Chris's question, if you don't mind, Chris. How do you what's your would you be able to give us a revenue kind of percentage breakdown? Where does it come from? I know I'm asking the difficult questions, but is it from, where do ticket sales compare with sponsorships?
At this point, more than 90% sponsorship, very less ticketing, because at SCMP physical event, mainly sponsorship, very few ticketing. For a 300 ticketed event, we maybe sell 5 tickets and that's it. Because of that, because of the legacy of that mode of operation, it got translated online. But right now, I would say about 95% sponsorship, 5% ticketed, simply because we haven't really hammered on the virtual events ticketing revenue. For the past couple of months, a lot of virtual events are free to attend. We started to sell tickets for our politically themed webinars because we can't find sponsors, so we have to find tickets, and that money is growing. But we also find that there are models out there. For example, the FT Weekend Festival. I keep on looking at FT because FT is very advanced ahead of us. But FT Weekend Festival have the sponsorship piece, but also have the ticketing piece, and this is something new they're trying to charge. They say that you watch the event for free, you watch the live stream for free, but you want to access the networking tool, you need to pay X dollars. If you want to access their concierge service where they got introduction made and all that, is Y dollars. So that is an experiment that Wall Street is also adopting, and there's something that SCMP will adapt as well for our upcoming conferences. It's all experimental at this point, but that is the kind of percentage that we're looking at.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to also make that judgment call between, making your tech stack work for you, or, you working to try and fit yourself into the tech stack. We experimented a great deal before this, just quickly, with things like Hopin, for example, which gives you speakers, lounges, and breakout rooms, and, but it's all online. And I mean, we hacked away at it for ages. It seems like a very sophisticated tool, and I'm sure people have figured it out and used it well. We certainly couldn't, and we prefer the relatively low tech approach.
Right. I think it's a balancing skill. When we go for demo, earlier on I mentioned that we need to go on demo. You need to understand what the product can do for you. I always remind my team, when you go for a demo call, don't ask what the product can do for you to deliver what you have in mind. Think about what they have and how you can use that. Because for that, chances of them customizing and changing what they're offering to suit your needs is close to zero. They don't need that kind of business. They have a lot of other business to go on. Then you need to very smartly and selectively use the right function and features to deliver to what you have. And so it's not necessary to be a very high-tech play. It can be a very low-tech play. So use out of the 10 functions that this platform have, maybe I use 2 of them, and that's good enough. You don't have to use every single thing, but you just know what your virtual event should achieve and select the right tool for it.
Yeah. Hey, let's go over to Dede, who's got a question about new skills. Dede, do you want to turn on your mic.
Okay, thank you. It's clear? Okay.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
Very good.
Oh, you spoke too soon.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. It's me,
Hi.
Dede from Jakarta. Thank you,
Hi.
Razlan, for your insightful presentation. I want to ask you about your team, how you manage your team. You maybe pivot your product with your team. I don't know if your event go online before COVID or just start when COVID
Right.
came to us.
Right.
So where they work from home, or you with how many tools that you explained before.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. I think this.
Yeah, sure. So my team is about 11% strong. And they are programming function, there's marketing function, there's sponsorship function, and there's operation function. Of course, there's admin support as well from other departments. Before COVID-19, we are SCMP is already going through this digital transformation, but a lot of our work is done on the cloud. So we have Google Suite to power all our documents needs. We have Slack as a real-time communication. So there's a lot of these kind of tools that typically a tech company we use, we're already using that. But we still very much a physical operation. I see my team every day. We come to office every day. So when COVID-19 hits, then we are still using this tool, but it's no longer sufficient. We need more advanced tool to help us to run the business. So we use project management tool like Write.com that I should mention in my presentation. We also use things like CRM tool like Salesforce. Because we realized that to be able to communicate effectively between team members and make sure that everybody is using the same set of information, we call it the one source of truth. We need to host it somewhere. We can't rely on emails and Slack messages. It's just too messy. So we use Write.com for that. So, and we also have a regular communication, and we have this mantra to say that don't ever think that you over communicate. Be wary that you didn't communicate. So just tell everyone what you're doing. Just keep on sending emails. Just keep documenting what you're doing, because that is always a better practice in this situation, work from home situation. But next week on Monday, the entire SCMP is coming back to office. So I got to see my team members again after months of not seeing them. But I also told my boss, I say that, hey, I can run the events business from the sofa at my home. So I don't need to be in the office. But obviously that was a joke. So I'm looking forward to see my team members again next Monday when everybody returns to office.
Thanks, Razlan.
Thank you, Razlan.
So we get the benefit of asking the last question here. I know it's coming up to time now. I think what's going to be interesting is that we'll probably see some events first media companies emerge in this space. Traditionally we've always started with a newsletter, or started with articles, but I think the space is ripe now for a events first media company to emerge. Give us maybe two tips if you were to start an events team, or start thinking about or building a business on events. What are two things that we need to know?
First thing, your database is key. You need your database. So if you're starting events business, you need to figure out how you get your database sorted, how you get your database built. Is it going to be from acquisition? Is it going to be partnership? And how you manage the data of the database, because 90% of the conversion when it comes to event registration and people buy ticketing comes from email marketing to our SCMP database. So your database is going to be your fundamental baseline things that you definitely need to do. The second part is to figure out your process, because that process, the operation thing, things that seem mundane, things like your speakers briefing, your testing, your run through your program, things like that. If you do not know the details, you do not have one set of process in place, you are not going to be able to scale your business. You are always going to be firefighting every single day. Having that repeatable process is so key to us that we should document it, that in Write.com, when we run our project, every time we launch a new event, I'll duplicate that process into the event and tell them that this is step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that has been key to our ability to scale our business. So if you ask me, two tips will be database and process. Everything else like business development, marketing, all that, they are things that you have done similarly in other businesses compared to events, but particularly for events, these are very important.
I love that. You said, you're talking about your two sort of tips are all about the making it right for the people that you want should attend. You're talking about the people in your database, and then the tools and the workflows that you use in order to sort of get them into those event groups. I also liked what you said about MVPs, that minimum. I'm going to go back to it because I love it. What makes an event work? Figure it out, have a very stringent process in place. And if you see it doesn't meet those metrics, then don't do the event. And I think that's a great way to fail fast and fail cheap, right? Razlan, thank you.
Never cheap, but fail fast, yes.
Fail fast, never cheap. Razlan, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I know how I've got a lot to learn. We've all got a lot to learn.
So good.
On the last day of beta, this was the right. This is the right.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for your time, Razlan.
Thank you. I'm happy to. I mean, if you guys want to connect offline, offline, online, let me know. Just drop me an email. Happy to help in any way I can.